Hey, my name is Jesse. This is just another podcast where I talk with different individuals about different things in life. In podcast 6, I spoke with the intelligent, the intuitive, the creative, and funny Spencer Winnick. We have been friends for a long time. We've done many creative things together, such as drawing, singing, improvising, and even making a movie together. I hope you can enjoy this conversation that we had with one another. If you want to know what the topics are in this video, then you can look in the description box below. The podcast will now begin.
The first question I have for you is, have you been doing any improv, acting with friends, practicing acting alone, or even drawing lately? Any music, anything? What have you been doing creatively in your free time?
So I'd say probably my biggest creative outlet has been working on drawing. I got an iPad recently and got the like stylus, the pencil thing, and I've been working on some of the art programs, just messing around with them because it's something I hadn't done much myself, and it's
Rad.
been
Are you going to share any
fun
of
and
that with
inspiring.
with others, or is it more of kind of a personal way to process what's going on in life and just express what's going on in your heart? Or
Yeah. I find for me, that drawing is much more the second is more like a almost like a meditative thing or something, like kind of a free flow state. And
okay,
what I end up with in the final finished product is not like it's rarely like I'm setting out to draw any specific thing. It's just kind of like seeing where it goes and where things flow. And what's been fun with this, that's sort of how drawing's always been for me. But what's been fun with messing around with some of these programs is just like it's no longer just a pencil and or a pen and paper. Like I can mess with different brushes and different patterns, and at least been adding some elements to the artwork when it comes to like shading or adding dynamics or textures or colors or things like that, and in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise maybe had the access or skill set or tools to do so. And so that I've been enjoying kind of adding other layers, dynamics to what I'm drawing. But yeah, for the most part, it's just stuff that I'll save the pieces that are more finished or something that I like on my on my hard drive, and I might show them to some people, but I've yet to put them up on any kind of social media or put them
yeah.
out there in that way.
Are you
Yeah.
using
And the other
Procreate?
thing I have Procreate and I've used that some, and then there's I guess I would akin it to like if Procreate is like Pro Tools or something, or like one of those. I have one that's more like a Garage Band like esque,
More
more
simple?
simplified one.
Yeah.
Yeah, free drawing one that I've used too, and I've kind of messed around back and forth with them and done some on both of them, and found, at least I guess maybe just because I'm still pretty primitive when it comes to these programs, that I actually have liked the free one more. Maybe it's just slightly simpler, but still has a lot to offer, like way more
Yeah.
than I've tapped into. Like whereas like Procreate is like, I feel like I almost haven't earned my stripes to like really delve into that one as much, where I'm getting everything out of it. So I'm just kind of still messing around with both of them, but have used the drawing app. I think it's just called Drawing,
I hear you.
more than I have with Procreate. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. And sometimes I feel almost intimidated to jump into some of these programs that are being created because they're just the learning curve is not so easy. And then my self-confidence and my internal narratives are like playing these stories where like I'm not clever enough, I'm not technically mature or intelligent enough, and then that kind of like is a blockade that prevents me from going further, and it's just not that fun. To the learning curve is like a difficult process at times, and it pulls away from the creative side of which is the point of what we're originally getting to, I think, at least.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can relate to that, where yeah, if you're less confident, even if it's not necessarily the case, like it's just like my own self-doubt or feeling intimidated by what I'm getting into, not knowing as much about it, especially when dealing with like the Adobe programs or Procreate or some of these bigger programs, that it's probably my own mental blockade of like feeling intimidated to go into it. But if it stifles the creativity, then it's as good a reason of any to take a different approach. So yeah,
All in good
that's
time.
I can relate on that. Yeah, absolutely. I just the fact that it's getting me to kind of look into another medium and do some creative stuff is good. And then I've been doing a decent amount of like writing, just like stand up and comedy ideas and stuff. And, you know, kind of when things come to mind, writing things down and sort of brainstorming the outlines of that type of stuff to keep like that sort of comedic creative mind alive and going, with the hope and expectation to do some stand up though.
That's awesome. Before we go into stand up really quickly, I want to say that Spencer's father is like an incredible illustrator, and if you want to check out any of his stuff, you can look at the link below of this video. But he creates some incredible illustrations, and Spencer, although Spencer doesn't share his illustrations, he's humble, and I think his illustrations are really interesting, and hopefully someday we can see that, or others can see that. But yeah, I think before we go into the comedy, I think I just want to say that like when I looked at your drawings a number of years ago, I saw that like there was already a number of stuff that was worth sharing. And I see a lot of people on the internet sharing just pictures of like the sketches in their book, you know, and sometimes you can even take a photo of a sketch in your book, or take your best sketch and then drop some colors into it, or not even. But but I also understand the side of not sharing. Sometimes that's just not necessary or not wanted. But what about stand up? Are you doing any stand up? Like, are you going to stand up and doing any, or are you mostly observing?
So I haven't done much in the way of the open mic scenes here in town. I mean, my best excuse is that a lot of them seem to clash with my evening work schedule, though it's also just my own intimidation of it, and I guess being less.
If you listen to the most recent Lex Friedman podcast, episode number 300 with Joe Rogan, he talks in depth about the fear of doing open mic and stand up, and all the people that fail with it. And I don't know if you checked it out or have any interest, but if you do have any interest, I highly suggest checking it out. He goes into like the psychology of the fear and everything. If you just find that part of the podcast, I think it would be, I thought it was inspiring. It almost inspired me to want to do some open mic or something like that. But it's very interesting.
Lex had Joe Rogan on his podcast. Yeah, I know he was on Rogan's podcast like within the last couple months as well. And it was something that the comedy thing came up as well.
Yeah,
I just wanted to thank you for the kind words that you said about my dad's artwork and about my artwork too. I know we've done some fun kind of just
drawing
playful,
together.
Creative illustrating and drawing together, and it's always been a great thing that I enjoyed. I still have a lot of the drawings that we did one of the last times you were in town, and we drew together. So that was an enjoyable thing, and I dig it, and I definitely appreciate you've always been a supportive person and a co-inspiring person to do creative things like that with.
Yeah, we've done drawing together, singing together, acting, improvising together. We both have done some creative stuff together and philosophizing together, kind of letting our creative sides express themselves through different mediums and yeah, or human outlets.
Exactly. It's always
It's been
been a
good.
pleasure.
Yeah, I'm grateful that we've had this creative friendship and been able to learn from each other and explore creativity in different ways together. I'm grateful for you in my life.
Likewise. Thank you. I'm grateful for you too, Jeff.
Okay, so you don't have to spend too much time on this one, but for me, I have like this mental projection on you as more of like your intuition is more developed than a lot of other people. My question to you is, in your mind, how does someone develop intuition, and how does intuition benefit someone if they have developed that ability?
That's a really interesting, good question. I mean, developing it, I don't have necessarily the best way of putting that into words. I guess the best thing I can say about it is I think we all have a certain degree of it, but I think we just don't necessarily realize or identify what it is until maybe it's too late and we've kind of deafened that. I kind of akin it to like sometimes, and this is just from my own personal experience because I only know what I personally have experienced with the level of intuition or whatever that I have.
Yeah.
But like sometimes there may be like a voice in your head or a feeling in your stomach or something kind of when you're going into a situation, and I kind of akin that to a sense of intuition or like our own intuitive instincts. And I think a lot of times people dampen that or deafen that because go against it rather than sharpen that tool until they get to a point where they've sort of dulled that and it's not so much there. I think kind of our intuition is an important thing that is there to keep us true to ourselves, keep us aware of situations and kind of maybe situations that are better or not so good for ourselves, or sort of a sense of things. There's a lot of times where like I'll get whether it's like a daydream or a dream or a gut sense of intuition of something happening, whether it's positive or negative or indifferent, and it just like almost to a T happens that way afterwards.
Wow.
And in a way, I guess you can say it's helpful, but it's also kind of not, because it's like you want to be optimistic and not think like if it's something that's not necessarily a good thing, you don't want it to be like a self-fulfilling prophecy or something like that, and you want to be optimistic and whatnot.
One thing that makes me think of, Spencer, is like, let's say hypothetically that kind of thing is going to happen, it's going to come to fruition, and there's not much you can do about it. Like the way that arises for you and the way you've explained it to me, where it's like you're seeing it or feeling it beforehand, the way I interpret that almost is like, instead of the shock occurring in a smaller and more explosive way in the immediacy of the moment when it arises, it's almost more like the shock factor to your whole system and mind is spread out through like a wider time window in like a time span, and then you can like kind of process the shock factor with more time, and that kind of alleviates the intensity and the pressure of the experience. Would you say that that's kind of how it benefits you in one sense, or no?
Yes and no. I would say like in a not so beneficial, like part of that's true, but the other part is like this is the best example I can give of to like sort of like a analogy kind of like we lost our dog, our family dog, and she was getting old and we knew it was going to happen, and kind of like family dog lived with my mom up in Oregon, and every phone call I remember, I was like, when she'd call, I was kind of worried, like, oh, is this the call I'm going to get, like that the dog passed away? So I was trying to mentally and emotionally prepare myself for when it happened as well as I could. But when it happened, it was a total shock to my system still, and almost felt worse or more difficult, because I was like, here I've been trying to mentally and emotionally prepare myself for this thing, but yet I feel totally unprepared and totally hit hard. And it's almost like a little more awestruck, because while you've been thinking about it and trying to prepare yourself, certain things, at least, maybe in some factors or situations, it is beneficial and it is more that way. But in some, I find it's like
it makes it worse.
A harder thing. It's more, it's more frustrating, because it's like, despite almost knowing it's something is going to happen, or preparing yourself for the worst, there's no real preparing yourself for it. Which I guess the message I would take from that is like, whether you expect or not, what's going to happen is going to happen. I guess to best be prepared for any and all outcomes, but also be prepared for being unprepared. Because even when you think you're prepared for something, that's when it'll hit you hard, and you'll feel like, oh, I spent all this time trying to prepare myself, when really you were maybe stressing yourself out. And then you're more ill prepared, because you feel like, despite trying to prepare myself, here I am, like, in this situation of really being hit by something. And I guess that's one thing I can kind of say about it, is it's sort of beneficial and not so beneficial. Like, one thing I generally will say when it comes to those types of things is like, I'm rarely surprised by a situation. But that's also like rarely pleasantly surprised. Like if I have a feeling of something, or I'm worried about something, or something like that, and I try to prepare myself, and it happens exactly that way, it's not really like a good or fulfilling feeling. It's kind of like I mean, I don't know. There's been a few instances very recently where like a situation was going really well, and my mind, it's my own anxiety. We'll go to a place of like there's stakes are high. There's so much to lose in this situation. Like, I hope something doesn't go wrong. And then my mind will go to the place of like all the ways a thing could go wrong. And then one of those things that my mind went to, without any real sign of that going that way, will end up happening. And then it's like, should I almost bring this about by hyper focusing on it? Like, it's a head trip and a half. And so, I mean,
I was listening.
I guess it's
I was listening to one podcast where a guy was talking about like manifesting things with our mind, and like with COVID, COVID happened, and he's like, did I manifest that with my mind? Like, so I think, I don't know. It seems like challenging to, I have experienced anxiety and stuff, but like, ultimately, what else can we do than try to observe that we're having the anxiety, observe that we're thinking about the future, and try to ignore it, and try to just be aware that that's happening, try to feel it, and know and be honest with ourselves that this is what we're experiencing, and then try to come back to the present moment, try our best to exert our focus and our attention to this moment, and just live as skillfully in this moment. And then, whatever's happening with us anxiety wise, mentally wise, we try to be aware of that and honest with ourselves about what's happening, but then at the same time, come back to the moment and try to make the best decisions we can in this moment, in the face of what's going on within us mentally and emotionally. I don't know, what else can we do, really?
Right.
I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a big one for me, especially if like my mind goes to some negative thing of like death, or fearing something that's just like totally out of our control. Is almost like, the more I dwell on it, like, the worst thing that could happen is the more I dwell on it, whether it's like realistic thought or not, the more like I could bring that into fruition. So I try to more or less go like, all right, like, dwelling on this isn't going to do anything but make me stressed out. And if there's any possible way that like, the more I think about this, the more I'm manifesting something like this, then that's not doing me any good. So like, I will try and go through that process, like you're saying, of like, acknowledging that it's there and that it's something that happens, and try and do my best to like let it pass through, and not hang on to and over stress about and go down a rabbit hole of one of those things. Because like, worst case scenario, I've just spent X amount of time tripping on something like that and done nothing to help myself.
It really, for me, it really helps
bring it about.
It really helps me to just label it. Like, whether I'm on the toilet or walking somewhere, like if my mind is like worried about manifesting something negative, or like worried about some negative future coming that's out of my control or in my control or whatever, I don't really know. But just being like, all right, this is my internal insanity. Like, this is my craziness. Like, and just when I label it, it's like, I'm aware that like that energy or that thought process is like not benefiting me. I'm like, this is like my, it's like, if insanity doesn't work for someone, there's like other words, but like this is my unhelpful kind of thought
Like
process or whatever. Yeah.
neurosis,
Yeah, my
neurotic,
neurosis.
like,
But just labeling it and
yeah,
stamping it on that thought process, it can like help me to disassociate with it and to not be like so entangled in that spider web of thought processes.
yeah. This is one aspect that I'm currently like kind of wrestling with in it about that type of thing is like when in relationships specifically,
Yeah.
like there has been too many times in my experience now, particularly in my all too recent experience currently of a relationship that's recently ended that I'm grappling with. There are insecurities or situations of like of which I had like fear or something like that. And my thought is like, the best thing to do is to be honest and communicative about it, and not in a way where I'm putting that on the other person, but where I'm just like, these are my insecurities and my feelings, and I just want to voice them, and almost kind of like leaving that, like if there's any validity to any of these insecurities where like I'm possibly picking up on something, or a person trying to, I guess, leave the communication window open on these things that I'm insecure about, so that especially if I'm like, I just like in an example, like maybe I'm the pace of a relationship with a person is not quite matched, or I feel like a fear of, am I moving too quick, or like at a, trying to do like I guess a temperature check of it and communicate those things, where my only thought is like, the best thing to do is to be open and communicate that type of stuff in a very open way, that it has not, I guess, especially with recently, a lot of things that I had feared or was insecure about that I didn't really have much to go off of why, other than just like I had said previously, like I was invested in something emotionally, the stakes were high, it was a situation where where the fears of or my fears, however rational or irrational, left me with everything to lose. Like it was a high stakes situation where I'm invested and I'm worried because it's like I can be hurt in this situation or I have a lot to lose. And my thought was like, okay, communicating that openly of like, these are my fears and my thoughts, like, to leave that window open, resulted in not helping the situation. Like I guess, which again, I think this also, it has to do with the person-to-person dynamic.
Yeah,
but
maybe
like,
that person is just not the right person for you, because it seems like that's something that you need to communicate, and then maybe they're not ready, or maybe the people that you've dated haven't been ready for that kind of conversation yet, or they're not the suitable partner for you because they're not, that kind of communication style doesn't work for them. But I mean, I would just trust yourself and continue doing that. If you feel like that's what you need to do, and you have certain hunches or intuitions and things you need to like talk about and get on the table, then you just need to talk about them, and maybe just letting go of any attachments or expectations about the relationship lasting for a certain amount of time, and just enjoying it for however long it lasts, and learning everything you can for, there's so many beautiful humans in the world. And sometimes our attachments to one person, or our attachments to the relationship lasting for a certain amount of time, can create so much internal turmoil. But if we can kind of have that non-attached approach,
that's
there's a
true.
less, but it's hard to do.
Letting go of the sense of like not control, but of like trying to hang on to something, and or fear of how long something will be, and try and be more just present in the moment. It's definitely something that I try and take away from any of those situations, and it's definitely like an easier said than done thing. That it takes work.
Yeah, it's
Sure.
not easy. It's not easy. How do you believe humans can best deal with their competitive tendencies? And on the flip side of that coin, how do humans create synergy between each other? And how can we steer our relationships and the way we relate to others online and offline in a more positive and harmonious way? So if we can try to talk about this briefly.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big question. It's a good question. I think this is something that I think we've sort of talked about in the past, at least touched on, whether it was directly this way or not. But I have a feeling that personally that our competitive nature, and especially the way that's kind of been implemented in our society, in a capitalistic society and whatnot, is a great motivator in some ways, but it's not whether, to me, the end game of motivating and driving something, also it's like at what cost, like the spirit behind that motivating, maybe not so great when creating synergy in the relationships and how we relate to people. Because I think a competitive nature is often looking at other people and what they have versus what you have, and measuring yourself against another person, which is like trying to come from a healthy place, never going to bring a lot of satisfaction. It may motivate you if you're inspired by somebody and you're looking at what someone's done, but to measure yourself against another person in a competitive way, I think it can serve to stifle growth in a lot of ways, and makes you look at another person as someone to get up on, or someone to get past, or someone you're measuring yourself against them. The root of against them, not with or something, is not necessarily the healthiest thing. And I think it's a major issue where we look at influencers and we look at other people, and especially in today with social media and everything else, and you see what you think people have, and we project our best selves on these formats, like an advertisement or marketing something, but it's not always necessarily true, and it leaves a lot of people unhappy and feeling unsatisfied, and like their lives are not the same or measuring up. And I think that breeds a lot of negative issues as well, and it breeds jealousy and greed and things like that. And it's something I fear has hurt us more than it's helped us. I mean, again, I think it's done a lot to drive society, but also at what cost? That's kind of my feeling about it in a nutshell, I guess.
Right on. Yeah. It makes me think, how do we pull the greatest potential out of ourselves without being in a race with others, without trying to always one up? And it's like, because the dynamic of differences is always going to be there. We're not the same. Each of us are not the same person. And then we have time, and we have our minds, and we have potential. How do we make the most of our potential without, being in this endless rat race, where we're trying to
Exactly.
So because we always can see how our lives are different. But I think,
Right.
yeah, maybe gratitude and contentment has a lot to do with this. I don't know, just being happy with who we
I
are
think
and what we. Yeah, I don't know.
A big one for me, which is like it may seem cliche, but I think cliches become that way for a reason, is like if we measured our differences with each other as like an interesting thing, and what makes us as people in societies interesting and different and like a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
and makes us not all cookie cutters,
Yeah.
and we looked at it in ways like that and embraced it more, and to be different in a totally nonconformist way. Like there's so much of that semi-perceived now, but I think it's all like it's a weird like element of like looking different the same way as everyone else, kind of a thing, if that makes sense. But like looking at times like the Renaissance and times where artistic expression was really a big thing, and like where people were much more free to do things on creative spectrums like that, and just places where in times in history where that's thrived, it seems to be that we were in a slightly less competitive, like at least to like make money or an end game. I guess that's a big thing, is like seeing somebody as social commerce or an end game on somebody, what they have, what you need from them, rather than like we were talking about the collaborative creative spirits of a friendship or something. It's a different mindset, and that shift is something that I think can do a lot to help that situation. Looking at differences as like a beautiful thing, not like a negative thing, and also like looking at people and situations of like not a means to an end, but like for the sake of the experience or what you can share with a person.
Right on, dude. I dig it. Thank you, Spencer, for jumping on the podcast and for going on a swim together, talking about a number of random different topics. Thanks for your time.
It was a pleasure.
Happy to hear your voice again. And
likewise.
Until next time, take good care, buddy. You're awesome. You're an awesome individual.
Thank you.
And keep on being creative in whatever ways you want to be. And I'm always happy
Jesse.
to.
Thanks for taking time with me as well. And it was great talking to you and catching up. And hopefully we can before too long. I really appreciate you having me on and taking the time to have a good conversation.
Yeah,
always nice to talk with you.
I enjoyed that, and it was nice to hear your different thoughts, and gives me more things to think about. All right, Spencer, take care, buddy. Thank you again. Bye, bud.
All right, thank you, Jesse. Be well, dude. Take care. Much love.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Bye.
Have a good sleep. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Again, if you have any interest in checking out some wild art, please go to the description box below this video to find the link for Spencer's dad's wild art. Thank you, and have a nice day.